Om Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. Dear friends, I have two short talks to make a presentation for you. One is on what is Zen, and second is on being a disciple. Of course, these are based on Osho's talks. Some time ago, when I had spoken to you about Hakun's Song of Meditation, I had given a brief overview of what is Zen. I will quickly touch that part again. Zen is a mystical tradition of Buddhism, just like Hasidism is a mystical tradition of Judaism, Sufism is a mystical tradition of Islam, and Tantra is a mystical tradition of Hinduism. Let us get into the state of Zen to understand what Zen is. Very often before we start our classes, we go in through a short form of a meditation. What do? We ask ourselves to close our eyes, become aware of our breathing, become aware of our whole body. If there is any tension in any part of the body, just to relax. As far as possible, keep your mind free from all thoughts. At this moment, you can keep your eyes open. But as you are open, keeping your eyes open, I want you to be very attentive on the one who's listening to this talk. Let us do what is called Zen listening. Zen listening is when I am speaking, I am 100% speaking. When I am walking, only walking. When I am eating, 100% eating. The whole style of Zen is to do everything 100%. Slowly, completely, 100% in whatever you're doing. Don't go into another task unless this is completed. And it doesn't matter how much you do, but whatever you do, do it 100%. And the other emphasis on Zen is devote some time to just sit quietly, do nothing. This is called the art of being, or Zen people call it Zazen. Even last time I had spoken about the birth of Zen through one of the discourses of Gautama Buddha. Gautama Buddha has been speaking continuously for many years. In one of his talks, he comes to the audience holding a flower in his hand. And for more than 60 minutes, 70 minutes, 80 minutes in front of a very still audience, he has not opened his mouth. He's very attentively looking at the flower in front of him. At that moment, Mahakashyap, who was until then unheard of disciple of Buddha, begins to laugh and laugh loudly. Buddha calls Mahakashyap, gives him the flower and tells him, whatever I can convey by words, I have conveyed it to all of you. And whatever I cannot convey by words, I convey it to you, Mahakashyap. This non-verbal communication, where the master communicates something very profound to the student, and yet no words are involved, is what is the experience of Zen. About 200 years after Buddha comes one of the greatest Zen masters of all time, a South Indian king's son who moves to the north and decides that if Zen has to survive, if Zen has to grow, the climate in India is not suitable. It needs a very balanced environment. He crosses the Himalayan, passes up through Tibet and enters into China. And there he introduces Zen into China, where it grows and grows and grows, but unfortunately, it does not blossom. A third master called Rinzai, a Chinese teacher, takes Zen from there to Japan. And in Japan, it had the right environment to blossom, like the cherry blossom. Zen blossomed in Japan. So to summarize, the seed for Zen was in India. The plant grew in China and it blossomed in Japan. The founder could be identified as Mahakashyap. The one who allowed it to grow into a plant was Bodhidharma, and the one who brought it into flowering was Rinzai. The Indian word for Zen was Dhyan, 100% meditation. Every now and then we need to keep a check out yourself. Are you into your world of thoughts, or are you 100% into whatever you're doing? The same word dhyan in China becomes chan, and in Japan it becomes Zen. If you are looking at Zen stories, most of these stories are from Japanese background. These are very beautiful, but you may entertain them. It may be like a joke, but just by reading these anecdotes, we are not able to penetrate into the significance of what Zen is. Zen masters are able to say something of your inner being which cannot be said and which cannot be shown. It cannot be indicated, but they have a knack of indicating something which is beyond the mind. In such a simple way that you can miss it. And the whole technique is to go beyond the mind in a way like opening of the heart. This is the Zen story for today. And the story goes like this. Somebody asked the master, Bokuju, we have to dress, we have to eat every day. How do we get out of all that? So Bokuju answered, we dress, we eat. The questioner said, I don't understand. Bokuju replied, if you don't understand, put on your clothes, eat your food. That is it. And Osho is able to speak 1 hour and give us insights into what is Zen. Because as you said, from the surface, it looks very dry. It looks like the teacher has not conveyed any information. But let us look into seeing how Osho is able to unfold the story for us. Now, this is the problem of the disciple. All of us have got work to do, which every day, which is not pleasant. It may be a lot of hard work. It may be dealing with a difficult person. It may be dealing with certain medical or financial issues. And this is an everyday thing. And this is what he goes to the teacher and says, now we have to do this every day. And it is becoming too much. I don't have time for any spiritual activity. How do we do? Now, if the same problem was given to a Vedanta guru, how would he approach it? He would approach it by saying, everything is illusory. Everything is Maya. So from one form of reality, this is called a Vyavaharika reality, which is a lower form of reality. And in a lower form of reality, all you need to do is don't give too much importance. Eat, put on your clothes, do everything, but don't give too much importance, because after all this is a lower form of reality compared to what we are looking for, which is the Paramarthika reality. This is the approach of Vedanta. How would the Chinese master Confucius approach this? Confucius is a very balanced, very logical person. And he would have given a different kind of answer. If this question is given, he says, this is a very important question. I have a lot of rules about how you should dress, how you should eat, how you should walk, how you should talk. And he gives you a lot of rules. And if you're able to practice these rules, you will be able to live comfortably in society. But Zen gives a totally different answer. And what is the modality of Zen? Zen says, we dress, we eat. Such a simple answer. It looks ordinarily, it looks gibberish, it looks nonsense. But what is the significance of all this? The significance is, according to Zen people, when we eat, we are 100% eating. When we dress, we are 100% involved in dressing. There is no eater involved. There is no dresser involved. And when you are so total, there is no mind. And so there is nobody asking you, how do we get out of it? Now, what we could analyze from our own understanding is the whole problem is the problem of the ego. How would Vedanta approach it? Vedanta says, all this is a dream. You're walking, you're eating, you're dressing is a dream. How does Zen say, you are a dream? Your ego is a dream. You're not so real. And Bokuju is saying, don't bring yourself into it. Simply eat, walk, sleep. Not that walking is a dream, but the walker is a dream. Not that eating is a dream, but the eater is a dream. If you really look into yourself and see, these are important things that we need to watch. When we walk, is there really a walker inside? Walking is such a complex phenomenon. We walk, we eat. But what really happens? Just we have the intention of walking and the complex neurological process of walking happens. We eat and the whole process is digested. We don't have to think of what's happening. There is no eater, there is no walker. Supposing a person is paralyzed, do we know how to make him walk? Because we really do not know about what this whole walking mechanism is. So the Zen process is be 100%. When you meditate and when you come to the fulfillment of meditation, there is no meditator. There is nobody to say meditation has happened. And if you can do that in meditation, Zen people said, can your eating be a meditation? Can your walking be a meditation? Your everyday activity becomes a meditation. That is why Zen is purified of Buddhism. When Zen has taken out even Buddha, all the Buddhist concepts, and the most essential, the purest form of dhyan is left. And that purest form of consciousness is what Zen is. And therefore, if you have the attitude of Zen, you will not get bored because you are not there. The ego is not there. The ego comes with the memory of yesterday. You're not going to say the same breakfast every day because you are not there. There is no one who remembers yesterday's. Bokuju lives in the moment. He does not bring in the past moment. The whole exercise of Zen is to move from mind to no mind. So Bokuju says, do everything so totally that you don't feel it is like a repetition. Don't bring the past. And when there is no past, there is no one to compare. Now, sometimes if you look at the approach of Zen, you see the similarity in the approach of Ramana. What does Ramana do? When anybody goes to Bhagwan Ramana with a problem and he says, Bhagwan, I have a problem, his standard question is, I understand you have a problem, but who is the one who's got a problem? And the person will say, I have a problem. Who are you? Have you inquired? Who is this person who has the problem? And when you inquire, you will realize for this you need help to go, that there is really no real person who has the problem. It is a pseudo entity, and all our problems are because of the pseudo entity. And the approach of Zen is similar to the approach of Ramana in trying to take the ego out. So Bokujo's answer, when the questioner was very innocent, he goes back to the teacher and says, but I don't understand. So the teacher said, if you don't understand, no problem. Put on your clothes, eat your food. It may not look very compassionate. It looks like the teacher is not very understanding, but the teacher is very understanding. He knows for one thing that the problem is in the mind. The mind cannot understand. The mind is so tiny to understand the whole, and the tiny cannot understand. And therefore, when you cannot understand, there is no point trying to understand. So the teacher's advice is, okay, don't bother about trying to understand. Do your job and don't think too much about it. Now, the whole exercise of Zen is to move from mind to no mind. You will see, for instance, when you sleep, so much bodily activity happens. Your food that you eat is digested, the blood is filtered in the kidneys, and all the waste products are removed. The whole metabolism is happening. Moment to moment, hundreds of things are happening, and all this do not require the mind. So the mind is something for transactional purposes. When you wake up, Bokujo is not saying, you don't have to do without the mind. You don't have to cut off the mind. For transactional purposes, just like when I have to communicate with somebody, I use the mobile telephone. And when I don't want to be disturbed, I have that option in the phone to put it on silent so that it does not disturb me. The approach of Zen is that, can you make your mind a servant and not a master? Use it when required, and when you don't require it, pull it into a silent zone. Now, this is the analysis of the story, and this is how Osho concludes in this little story. He says, I want you to live so totally, you live in the world, but you don't be affected by the world. The more whole you are, he says, the more holy you become. I don't want you to unmute and answer this question, but there is one verse in the Bhagavad Gita which says how to live in the world and not be affected by it. And if you will remember, this comes in the 12th chapter. It is also the 15th verse which says, Yasmano dvijate loka, loka no dvijate shayaha. That means live in the world, but you're not affected by the world. At the same time, you don't affect the world adversely. You're very, very sensitive to people around you, but you are so insensitive to yourself that you're not easily hurt by things that are happening. Osho's conclusion of the story is, I want you to live in the valley. At the same time, I want you to be in the peak. I want you to be in Vyavahara, at the same time be anchored into Paramarthika. He says, become a man of the valley and a man of the peak. I want you to be both. Only then you will be able to understand Zen. Now, this is the first story. What is our take on it? If I have to analyze, what is it? All of us in our day-to-day life have things which are not very pleasant to do. It may not be just eating food and putting on our clothes. It is so many more things. It may be our daily work that we have to do to earn a living, or there may be a lot of work at home or dealing with certain difficult people. So what is the Zen approach? The Zen approach is just do it. There are no two options to it. The more you think about it, it is going to complicate it. And the Zen people say, eat your food, put on your clothes. With that, I will go to the next story. Now, we are moving from China, we are moving from Japan now to China. Now, this is on the art of being a disciple. The art of being a disciple means the art of being a bhakta. And what kind of a bhakta? Not an ordinary bhakta, but a parama bhakta, the highest form of a bhakta. From now on, I would like to introduce more than one form of teachers in our journey. That in medicine, we have a term called visa terge and visa fronte. That there is one engine that is going to pull you from front, and there is another engine that pulls you from the back. For many years, I've been exposed to the wisdom of Osho. Osho speaks of his understanding as a realized master. He has gone into all Zen stories, all Sufi stories, into the Upanishads, into the Gita, and into all the great literature that we have. And he tries to bring us to that level. Very fortunately, we have another great master who tells us, although he is in the peak, he's able to bring us to his level through multiple steps. And if you look at the whole process of the Bhagavad Gita, Swamiji has given us a very clear path. The first part of our life is Jnana Yogyata. And how do you get Jnana Yogyata? Through Karma Yoga and through Upasana. When you do karma like you do as Ishwar Arpana Bhava and Prasada Bhava, your mind becomes more sensitive to Jnana Yoga. That alone is not enough. You will have to do various forms of meditations, primarily so that your mind becomes more focused, the mind becomes more drawn within, because the real you is within. And then he makes you more sensitive to the world around you and gives you that Divya Chakshu to be able to see Ishwara Arpana Bhava. You don't have to go to the temple, you don't have to go to Kailash, you don't have to go to Kaaba to see God. In and through the monitor that you see, the table the chair you are sitting on is divine. If you're able to see Bhagwan on the floor, if you're seeing Goddess Lakshmi on the floor where you have kept your feet on, and that is the sensitivity that brings us from the first Shatkam and the second Shatkam. The first 6 chapters bring us into the Karma Yogi in us. The next 6 chapters bring out Upasana to bring us into the flavor of Jnana. In Jnana Yoga, you realize 2 things you need to understand. Whatever you see in the world around us, as so nicely brought out in the Mundaka Upanishad, is the existent world. And to be able to appreciate Bhagwan as existence. And then through the hand example, he explains, if I have to see anything around, it is because of the light on that object. And how do I see that light? I'm able to see that light because of the light of consciousness within me. Swamiji has opened our eyes to existence outside and consciousness within. And that understanding that the existence outside is not different from the consciousness within. And to bring these 2 together is called Jivatma Paramatma Aikyam. And that brings about the Purnatvam. For teachers like this who have given us such insights, what kind of gratefulness and what type of reverence can we do? And that is the whole aspect of being a disciple. And this is the greatest kind of relationship, and the greatest kind of relationship between two beings is the kind of a master-student relationship. And I will now introduce you to three great Chinese masters. And according to Osho, perhaps there is no greater wisdom than Lao Tzu. Lao Tzu means a wise old man. He was the king of China, wanted him to give his wisdom, but he was very certain that he would not write anything. You would have heard his analects in so many ways. In Lao Tzu, you will remember, for instance, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And Lao Tzu also said, those who know don't speak. Those who speak, they do not know. And he found it extremely difficult to put his understanding in words. He wanted to escape from China to Tibet. And on the border, a Chinese guard caught him and told him, for the next 3 days, you have to sit here and write. In those 3 days, some 60 or 70 analects he wrote. And that brings about that very famous book, which is now available. You can go through that. It's called the Tao Te Ching. Tao Te Ching, where are some 60 or 70 analects, and very recently Wayne Dyer has analyzed and elaborated each of them in a book which is available on Amazon or any of these online books. And the name of the book is Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Destiny. Lao Tzu was one of the greatest of Chinese minds, and he's the founder of the school called Taoism, pronounced as Dao. His student was Chuang Tzu. Chuang Tzu is another brilliantly enlightened master. Osho loved him so much that he named his main auditorium after Chuang Tzu. There is a famous story that we all know related to Chuang Tzu. It is said that one day, the very happy, cheerful Chuang Tzu was looking very depressed. And a student gathered around him and said, Master, what's wrong with you? And he said, I have a problem. I had a dream. And what is your dream about? In the dream, I was a butterfly going from one flower to another. And all the students laughed. And why are you so upset? And he said, I'm upset not because of that. I'm not sure if I had a dream that I had become a butterfly, or is it the other way around? Is it the butterfly having a dream that I'm Chuang Tzu and you are all my students? At that time, Chuang Tzu's student, Lei Tzu, who was also a student of Lao Tzu, comes in. And then he leaves the room. And everybody go to Lei Tzu and says, our master is in a problem, you need to help him. So he goes to the well, brings a bucket of cold water and pours it on his master. And his master jumps out. And Lei Tzu says, see, you're not a butterfly. If you're a butterfly, you would have drowned in this water. Anyway, that was the relationship between these two great teachers. And I will tell you a story now about Lei Tzu. Lei Tzu had one student, and this is the story. Every time, this is a story of Lei Tzu and his student. Every time Lei Tzu was not busy, one of his students called Yin Sheng took the opportunity to beg him for secrets. And this boy had joined him for less than a year. And every time when he was alone, he will come and say, Guruji, can you give me some secrets to tell you? I want to become like you. So Lei Tzu said, let me tell you what I learned from my own master. Now, the greatest art in the world is the art of becoming a disciple. It is unique, incomparable, a form of a relationship. In the Upanishad, we have a word which says Upanishad. That means when you go to the teacher, how do you go? You have to go close to the teacher and you sit just one level down. Because if you have to receive wisdom from the teacher, you cannot be on par. You have to be mentally a little lower, just like water flows from a higher level to a lower level. You have in the Prashna Upanishad, a group of 6 students come to a teacher, Pippalananda, and say, my lord, we have questions for you. The teacher says, well, I will answer, but for 1 year, you have to stay with me. And if after 1 year, If I know, I will answer. So this is the way a student relates. The student is ready to give up everything, utmost in passivity, not asking, not demanding, becoming completely empty. You know about this famous Zen story. If your teacup is full, the teacher cannot teach you. You have to be absolutely empty. What kind of patience? This is the kind of patience of Nandi. You have seen Nandi outside the temple, waiting and waiting and waiting. And the kind of waiting is the waiting for infinity. And we need to be like Nandi, because Osho gives a very poetic description. He says the relationship between a master and a student is one between the known and the unknown. The master comes from the domain of the unknown. Between the finite me and the infinite guru. Between time in me, eternity in the master. Between the seed and the flower. Between the actual and the potential. When you are near the master, you disappear as a person and you have to become absolutely still. There is no way you can ask because you do not know what to ask. And the master knows best when to give, what to give, and to whom to give. As we know, pearls cannot be thrown before a swine. It is only when you become receptive enough, the teacher is able to give those pearls. Therefore, the doing is on the part of the master. He knows. And the master never does. In fact, it is not that the master does anything. If the disciple can wait, slowly and slowly, the student is able to internalize the very being of the master. There was a great Zen master called Zenirin. And Zenirin had the ability to transform a lot of people. All masters are catalysts because in their presence, great things happen. Somebody comes to Zenirin and says, "What is the magic that you are doing with your disciples?" And he says, "I don't do anything." But this questioner comes and says, "But all your students are transformed. You have a wonderful group of students." So Zenirin's reply was this. He said, "Sitting quietly, doing nothing, the spring comes and the grass grows by itself." This is my message, friend. And this is the message of Zen. Sitting quietly, doing nothing, the spring comes and the grass grows by itself. The best things in life happen. The best things in life are not done. Normally in Vyavahara, we know one thing. Only when you do something, it happens. When you don't do, it does not happen. But look into your own life. You know the best things in your life happen. What can you do to make love happen? Love happens. And once love happens, you are just possessed by love. And this is something of a domain of not the normal Vyavahara domain at all. That is why Jesus compares God with love. Truth or God is more like love. Just like love happens, God or Atma Jnanam is something that cannot be done, but which happens. Going back to the story, every time Letuzu was not busy, Yen Sheng took the opportunity to beg for secrets. And so he says, "Let me tell you the story, what happened when I learned from my master." Here he's taking about not his master Chuantuzu, but his master Letuze. He said, "For 3 years, I began to serve the master. And after 3 years, I came to a state when my mind was no longer thinking of right or wrong, benefit or harm." See, right, wrong, benefit or harm are all mental attitudes. It took him 3 years to go beyond the mind, no longer thinking of right, wrong, benefit or harm. Then he said, "For the first time, I got a glance from the master." Now, it is said sometimes when the eyes meet with the teacher, that can be a transformative moment because the teacher now sees that you are at a different level and the way he relates to you becomes certainly much more closer. As you live closer to the master, after some time, your whole attitude changes. You shift from what is right and wrong, from your conscience, what the society has given you, to the window of the master. Because from the master's angle, there is no clear-cut distinction between right and wrong. So when my vision of right and wrong, benefit and harm was similar to the master, he says that was the time I got a glance from the master. I continued to serve him for 5 years. And after 5 years, suddenly my mind started to think about what is right, what is wrong, what is benefit and harm. And for the first time, my master's face relaxed into a smile. Now, Osho analyzes this. In the first 3 years, you were having the condition of society. And at that time, it took 3 years for the conditioning of what is right and what is wrong to go away. And now, you now have your own understanding. And when you have your own understanding of what is right, what is wrong, what is benefit and what is harm, and when the master is able to see that you have come to that level of understanding, he celebrates your inner being with your smile. Then later they said 7 years passed. And then I saw no difference between right and wrong, between benefit and harm. And for the first time, my master pulled me over to sit on the same mat with him. What happened after 7 years? After 7 years, the ego disappeared. Once the ego disappeared, the barrier between you and the teacher is gone. Now the disciple has disappeared. Once the disciple has disappeared, the master and the student have become one. Once the ego has gone, Jivatma Paramatma Aikyam becomes. Now we have in the Nirvana Shatakam, na Bandhur, na Mitra, na Gurur, na Shishya. Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham. Look at that Shiva moment when, see, the master was there only because of the ego. Once the ego has gone, the master has gone, the student has gone. Both these things gone. All these things take time. And therefore, this is the style of various teachers that unless you make an effort, this does not happen. So we need to have a right balance about putting in our effort at the same time to come from a state of being very receptive to allow the teacher to help you to work. Now, this disciple, like most of us, are impatient in the first year. Osho says you can have instant coffee, but you cannot have instant realization. What does the master do? The master is only a catalytic agent. He sits silently, does nothing, and the spring comes and the grass grows by itself. All we need to do is to wait. And Osho says, I can promise you that they will be given to you when you are ready. You don't have to ask. In fact, to say they're going to be given to you is not exactly right. The words Osho uses is, when you are ready, you will suddenly discover that whatsoever you are trying to achieve was already then within you. And that is the Tattvamasi Mahavakya. The lower bird has suddenly discovered that the higher bird is not other than you. That is why we make adoration to all our teachers. We are blessed to have so many gurus over the periods of time who have brought this great amount of learning. And Osho has this kind of message for us. He says you have to be both. You have to be a Shramana and you have to be a Brahmana. Shramana means the one who puts in an effort. Unless you put in an effort, there are, according to Swami Anubhavananda, he says there are 3 kinds of people who are awake at night. One is a rogi because he cannot sleep. The other is a bogi because he's going too much into the night into some form of entertainment. The third is a yogi, a karma yogi, an upasana yogi, a jnana yogi. And all of us, like all students, have to burn the midnight oil like we have done so methodically into the Mundaka Upanishad. The question is, I have come to the end. Have I gone back to each verse? Have I understood the meaning of each verse? I'm going through the Bhagavad Gita. Not only the verse that I have done, have I been able to get into the essence of all the verses that I have to go on. Now this needs to burn the midnight oil. And this is what Osho calls being a Shramana. Shramana means putting in effort. To succeed in life, 3 things are required. Prayatnam, Kalam, and Daivam. And when these 3 things happen, that is why I would like to conclude. Let us do our effort. Let us download grace. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Thank you very much.